Okay, I've got everything primed up. If you can see that there. I went ahead and coated the back side with silver on the inside. So when I put the lights in it, it'll reflect and bounce around and make my LEDs a little more efficient. So I've got all the parts. Silver on the inside, primer on the outside. And what I tried is I didn't have that paint on masking stuff, and the tape was really hard to get in there. So what I did is I used some petroleum jelly and I brushed it over the parts that I'm going to leave translucent, and the paint wipes off really nice after it sets up. So that was my way around that. Of course, I'll have to clean it really good before I put the blue on the nacelles and stuff, but seems like it turned out pretty good. So I'm letting this set up right now, and then the next step is I'm gonna gouge these out and run my wires in there for the LEDs to go up into the nacelles. Then I'll put putty in there, sand it, clean it back up. So that'll be the next step. Okay, so I got my wire. The wire that I chose to use, because I don't have any magnet wire right now, is a data networking cable. It's 22 gauge. And what I did is I stripped it out, and it's nice and color coded already. So I will be able to determine what wire goes where. And it's pretty good wire, and you can solder it nicely. So I'm going to gouge out in here and seat the wire down in the gouge, and then putty it up, sand it, reprime it, and we should be good to go. Okay, I've got that gouged out pretty good. It's looking nice. There was already a ridge there to follow, so I just went ahead and followed that. And what I did is I untwisted the wires so that I can lay them side by side. And that's how it's going to look when I'm finished. So I think it'll be all right. So let's go ahead and get the other side done, and then we can get the putty in there and get it sanded and primed back up like it never happened. If you make little gouges or little accidents, you're going to be puttying it anyway, so you can go back and fix that with the body work. So just make sure you don't go too deep, and make sure where the surfaces are going to made up with the other parts, to get that gouged out pretty good, so that when the parts fit together, there's room for the wire. Probably going to have to touch up the nacelles just a bit to make sure that they fit, so the wire doesn't interfere with it. And I went with a little wider bit than what I started out with, because I want to be able to lay the wires side by side. I think that's looking pretty good. So we're gonna go with that. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the wire down in there. I'm probably gonna have to search on YouTube and figure out how you're supposed to glue it. I was thinking about super gluing the wire just to hold it in place, and then I'll get my putty down in there, worked over it, get it all set in place and hardened up, and hopefully that's gonna do the trick. So we'll see. Okay, a little lesson I learned: don't try to put super glue in the trough. and then lay the wire in it, because then your fingers stick to it, you pull the wire back out. It just doesn't work very well for me. What I've found that works well for me is lay the wire in there, hold it down on either side, put a drip of super glue on it, and it'll run down underneath the wire into the trough. Once it sets, move along, put a drip, let it set, move along, put a drip. I held it in the corner really tight with a toothpick, dripped it, let it set up, moved on, then tied it in at the top. And mainly what I'm using the super glue for at this point is just to hold it in place until I get the putty built up in there. And once the putty's in there and hardened up, I don't think it'll be an issue. So if anybody has a better idea or whatever, you can leave comments in the comments section. Well, there she is, all glued down. So I'm going to let that set up good, because when you drip the super glue in there, it pools a little bit, so it takes longer to set. So as soon as that sets up, I'm going to go ahead and put my filler in there, and then we can sand it down, and I'll show you what the tracks look like after it's filled and sanded down. Alright, I got the first layer of Bondo in there. I know it's pretty rough looking, but I had all these little ridges in there, and since there's not an overlay kit for this one, I think I'm going to take those ridges out. I'm just going to flat file it, make it smooth to hide the gouge. So I'm going to let that Bondo set up for a little while. Once it gets nice and hard, I'm going to use a flat file and file it down, and then put some detail back into it around the edges, and see what it looks like. Okay, so here's what I got so far. I spent a few minutes working on filing down the putty. It's still really rough, but it's starting to take shape. I'm going to work on it a little more with the file, and should start shaping up good. I think I'm going to lose all this detail in here, because I don't want to get back in there and carve out all that detail. So anyway, I'm scared I'm going to get into the wire. But I think that's where I'm going to leave it tonight, and I hope you come back and check out the progress. And if you're building one, like I said, you can watch what I'm doing and the mistakes that I make, and hopefully you won't make the same mistakes. I'll tell you this, if you don't let the super glue set up 100% before you apply the putty, it doesn't react very well, and it makes it soft. So I had to do it over again because of that, but looks like it's holding really good. The wire's in there good and firm, so I think that part of it's going to turn out good. So I'll see you next time, and we'll pick up from here.